Hey everyone, my name is Nikki Johnson, and I am joined today with Brandt Jude. She's the founder of Invisible Innocence. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good,
How are you?
good. Thank you so much for your time and just the information that you have on raising awareness about human trafficking. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and so we're so privileged that you can be here with us today.
I'm honored to be here, so thank you so much for coming on, allowing me to come on.
Yeah, so tell us about what you do and why you do it.
Yeah, so I run a nonprofit called Invisible Innocence. I founded it as a way to support the needs of survivors of human trafficking by raising awareness through our educational programs and also working and supporting survivors of exploitation and other forms of trauma that make them vulnerable to being exploited.
So it's something that is happening in our state. So just kind of talk about that.
Yes, so human trafficking is happening in North Dakota. It's happening in all 50 states, really. And a lot of times when we think about human trafficking, we think of Hollywood movies or documentaries on Netflix, but we don't think about how it's really impacting our communities here in our state, because a lot of times we don't think it's here. And so what that really looks like a lot of times, so human trafficking in North Dakota looks a little different than what we're seeing in those.
Right, because a lot of times in North Dakota, we have that North Dakota nice stigma about us. And so you said in a conversation earlier that it's just that normalizing that conversation is something that should be changed to changing the conversation here in North Dakota. So for people who are not familiar with what human trafficking is, can you just break that down for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to lure an individual into some type of labor or sexual act for profitable gain. And so what that means, right? If I were to tell you about a great job opportunity that I had for you where you'd be able to travel, you'd get paid a certain amount, you get a bonus, and you to come work for me, and then when you come with me, I actually have you doing something different, or I'm forcing you to go on dates or perform sexual acts that were not part of the job description at all, and then I'm keeping all of your money. That's the use of force or of fraud or coercion, right? I'm persuading you to come with me to do something that you didn't initially agree to. Okay. Through force, a lot of times that's through violence or manipulation of love. And that happens here in North Dakota, right? So what does human trafficking look like here in the state of North Dakota? Mm-hmm. That could be in a relationship, or that could be through an employer. In a relationship, a lot of times there's a very hefty grooming process. I'm going to buy you gifts and make you feel really loved and accepted by me, and make you believe that there isn't anyone else out there who's going to show you that any more than I could give you. And then through that, then I start isolating you from your support group, your family, your friends, because again, I'm the most, I'm the one who's going to give you everything because you're the most important thing to me. And so in relationships, a lot of times there's that emotional abuse, and that can then lead to physical abuse to keep you there. That's through that force piece of it. Also, I could start blackmailing you. So let's say you do something that you would be ashamed of, whether that's using drugs or whether it's doing something at a party or, anything really to blackmail you that you wouldn't want to get out. That could be something that I would use against you so that you would then continue doing what I'm telling you need to be doing. In an employment setting, farmers, manufacturing, mining, construction, those are all different types of labor venues that are known worldwide, and we have those here in the state of North Dakota. So that could look like I would take you to a location, not allow you to leave it. I could force you to live where you work, and I could keep all of your money. If you were brought here from another country, I could keep your documents and keep you essentially prisoner with that information. If I brought you here with a visa and then didn't renew it, then you're illegal. So then I could use deportation as a way to keep you instilling fear. I mean, really with human trafficking, there's a lot of fear and shame and guilt that play into keeping victims trapped where they're at. There's a lot of times when you think about why are these people in these situations, yes, there were choices that led up to that event, right? But just because someone chooses to be a stripper doesn't mean they're choosing to be exploited through sex trafficking. And I always use that example because a lot of times we like to victim blame still. Even though we've gotten better, we still like to victim blame. Well, they chose to go work for that person, or they chose to date that person, or they chose that industry to work in. It doesn't validate someone being sold for profitable gain of someone else. It doesn't mean that I should be keeping the money that you're making. And that happens here in North Dakota from Crosby to Gwinner. And in every corner of our state, there have been cases of human trafficking that have occurred in both sex and labor trafficking. So there are some differences. So a lot of times there is a misconception of sex workers or survival sex compared to sex trafficking. And exploitation of sex and labor, yes, exploitation is taking advantage of someone to fulfill their need, right? So if you need shelter or you need that drug or you need food and you're having sex with someone for that and they're giving you that product exchange, that's exploitation. That's exploiting the person. That's exploiting the person's need. With trafficking again is through the use of force, fraud, and coercion for profit. So when there's that exchange of money, or there's the orchestration of me setting up and setting you up with a buyer at a certain location at a certain time for a certain amount of money, and then I keep that money and I transport you there, like that is the act of trafficking. So exploitation takes place within the realm of human trafficking, but they are different. So if someone's choosing to work in the sex industry, but they're keeping their money, that is a little different than if someone's not choosing to perform sex acts with someone and they're not keeping the money. That's human trafficking. That's exploiting that individual. Right. So, but that is something really important that people do need to understand, that not everyone who is having sex for money is a victim of sex trafficking, and not everyone who is like choosing that industry, yes, it's illegal, but there is a difference to that. There really is. And it's not that I'm advocating for sex workers. That's not what Invisible Innocence does. I just really, like, as a personal note, like there is a difference. Like if someone is choosing to do that, and they're keeping their own money, they are not a victim of sex trafficking. And that is important that people understand that as well.
Right, because I think it's common that people think, like, if I'm getting paid, to have sex, that they're being forced to do it, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, and sometimes then in stories that are being done, they're being mistitled or mislabeled, or, and I think sometimes when we are doing that, it actually takes away the severity of what sex trafficking really is, or what human trafficking really is, because then we're kind of numbing it down. Well, they were choosing this, and they were keeping their money, so they were like, what's the big deal with sex trafficking? And that's not it. Like, it's very much like force, fraud, and coercion. That's what I just continue to repeat, but that's so important.
Let's talk about some of that guilt and shame and why people stay.
Yeah. So when someone is in a situation of trafficking, a lot of times they don't realize they are in a situation of human trafficking. And that goes along with even domestic violence, right? A lot of times people don't even realize that they're a victim of domestic violence until well beyond that time frame that it's been happening. And also, there's a lot of shame when you are exploited and you are doing these different things, like buyers, how many people you're having sex with every night, or even with labor trafficking, being manipulated into a situation where you're being taken advantage of is really defeating, and it creates a lot of shame and guilt within yourself. And also, how do you come out of that situation, especially with sex trafficking, right? And how do you explain that to people without having that sort of judgment put onto you? when you are told over and over and over again that your value is based off of what someone's going to pay you or pay for you, that feeds into the value and worth that you see within yourself. And so if someone's giving you $5 for a, your value then starts coming down to that little amount of worth. When you're told over and over again by your exploiter, by your trafficker, that I love you, but only to this much, or I love you after I beat you, or I use food as reward, you stop seeing yourself as a person, because you're not treated like one. You're treated like an animal, or you're treated like a product. And how do you regain that self-worth? You know, a lot of times we have, when I've met survivors of sex trafficking specifically, they talk about how it was hard to come back and really look at themselves because they didn't believe that they were worth dignity. They didn't believe that they were worth having respect given to them because it was taken away, it was stripped from them. And that's the hardest thing to regain when you are doing things that are so looked at as so shameful and so sinful, and you are blamed for the decisions of and how you got there. It takes away a piece of your soul and your spirit. And people, I just, when I've met these individuals who have come out of out of trafficking situations, their resilience is, excuse me, their resilience to survive every single day is beyond anything I could imagine, because we call them survivors in the professional field after they've gotten out of the life, but to me, they survive every single day. They survive a life that involves a lot of violence, and it involves brutalities, and it involves manipulation that I couldn't imagine living through day in and day out without having to numb myself. And I meet these people who are overcoming addiction, and they're overcoming human trafficking, and they're overcoming homelessness, like all of these things encompassed together. And to me, they're a survivor well before like leaving that situation. And so I think a lot of times when we look at people and we look at them with pity, that's not appropriate. We shouldn't pity someone who's coming out of the life. We should honor the struggle that they have lived, because they're going to teach us lessons far beyond anything we can read out of a book.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your knowledge on what human trafficking is today. And next week, we're going to be talking about the who.
Yes.
Who it affects. And so make sure to tune in to kxnet.com every week for Let's Talk About It Tuesday with Brandt Jude from Invisible Innocence about raising awareness about human trafficking.
Thank you so much.